So hi everyone, and welcome to the sixth of our live virtual events that we're providing for you this year. If you don't know who I am Lucy Tomlinson, Resident Experience Manager at Barchester Healthcare, and I'm working with a team of people to bring these live events to you for your enjoyment as part of your activities and entertainment programme. I hope you're all well, and I can see we have a number of you joining us today. In fact, over 120 in Zoom, I can see, and about 20 on YouTube live as well. So welcome all of you. And I can see a number of you are already saying hi in the chat, which is great. So make sure you do that for us. So I would just want to go through a couple of housekeeping elements before we go into the content of our live event. And I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. So first of all, this is a Zoom meeting, which means that you're all muted. So there won't be any disruption for our presenter or our animals today. So some of you have your cameras on, which is great. So give us a little wave if you've got your camera on. It's always good to see you and say hi. And if you haven't already, just make sure that your name of your home is in the account of your Zoom there, so we know who's talking to us when we ask some questions. So there will be a question and answer session at the end of today's session, but we are also going to answer questions as we go along, and we'll talk more a little bit about that when we meet our special guest. So, and then finally, fire alarm. So absolutely, if a fire alarm goes off in your home, make sure that you follow your usual protocol. Anybody watching on YouTube, I just want to say hi to our community contacts if you are watching and not in one of our homes right now, and welcome to obviously all our residents and patients and staff that are watching today. So that leaves me very excitedly to say hi to our special guest, James. There he is. Hi, James.
Hi there.
Hello. So James is the senior curator at Sea Life London Aquarium. That's right, James, is it?
Yep, that's the my job title now.
That's the one. So you'll be providing a special tour of the aquarium, and you can already see in his background that we are live in the aquarium right now. But we're going to be looking at the Gentoo penguins, green sea turtles, and numerous sharks in today's adventure. So I'm going to start with James asking you a few questions before we get into the content today. And I don't know if you can see, there's many of our homes saying hi right now. So hello from Norton Manor. Guys, keep saying that, and obviously get your questions into the chat as well. So how have you been, James? How's life in lockdown at the aquarium been as well? How is everything?
Yeah, I mean it's been quite busy. We've obviously had to carry on coming to work, looking after all the animals. We did split our teams as well, just in case, a bit of a precaution. So it actually meant it was really hard work. We've had to work a lot harder with less people on site. But yeah, it's great to now be thinking about the last month as we run up to reopening.
And when are you reopening again?
So it's the third phase. So that should be May the 17th. If obviously all the other plans go to the sort of setup. I had my vaccine on Saturday as well, so that was quite good. So yeah, May the 17th. Measures will be in place, so it's safe for everyone to visit.
Brilliant, brilliant. And can you tell us where you actually are in the aquarium right now?
So I wanted to give you the best view, not of my face, obviously, but of the animals that we have here. So I'm actually sat on the floor in one of the public areas where be full of public normally. But this is the ocean tank right in the heart of the attraction. We can see a cow-nosed ray just cruising past there, and a few other little fish chasing each other around looking for a bit of dinner.
Brilliant. I think what we'll do, we've got which we'll talk more about the footage that we've got, but if we've got anything flying over you, swimming over you during the chats that we have, I'll ask some questions about that. So everyone, we have pre-recorded some footage to be able to show you today, mainly because in our testing for the events, we found that the Wi-Fi was a little bit iffy in some of the locations, so we wanted it to be as smooth running a live event as possible. So that means we've got 3 sort of separate videos that James will talk through, and you'll meet James on the recorded side as well. But please do, everybody that might have a question, we have got time after each recorded video to answer some of your questions. Get them in the chat like Lawton Manor have just done to say good afternoon. So I appreciate that. So everybody get your questions in the chat. I'll read them out to James, and we will have a lovely old event. So James, I think this means that you can share your screen, and let's have a look at some of the animals.
Great. Okay. So yeah, I'll introduce myself here, and then I will also introduce myself on the video. Don't be alarmed; it's not my much hairier brother. This was videoed before the next stage of lockdown was lifted, so I've actually had to manage to get my hair cut now.
My name's James. I'm the senior curator here, so I'm in charge of the team that works with the exhibits, some of which you can see behind me. So it's looking after all the animals, creating new exhibits, scuba diving in the tanks with the sharks. We do that, yep, they are perfectly safe, there's no problems there. It's very cold, actually. This is probably more of a dangerous dive because this water's very cold in here, so there's not quite as many volunteers when it comes to dive here. I just thought I'd quickly show you my face because I'm going to be behind the camera for most of this, and in a minute we'll go in and meet our penguins. So I'll just take the camera off Charlotte, who is about to go in. So this is Charlotte and Ashley, so you'll see them again inside the exhibit in a minute. So off you pop and we'll see you there. Right, so these are our penguins here at Sea Life London Aquarium. These are Gen 2 penguins. So this actually is their claim really, they're the third largest penguin species in the world, after the king and the emperor. But actually, as you can see there, they're pretty fast swimmers. These are the fastest swimming penguins in the world. So in the wild, they would use this for catching their food. They eat a lot of krill, small shrimps. These are pinky in colour, which gives them the colour to their beak and their feet. Also, they have to evade predators. In the wild, the leopard seal is quite a voracious predator of penguins. They're very inquisitive. So you'll probably see they like to come to the microphone. Yeah, they're certainly they're quite interested in what's going on. They've actually missed the visitors in this time whilst we're being closed. Most of our other animals are kind of just doing their own thing in the exhibits and not sort of that bothered about the public, but the penguins definitely are. Now, as you can see, there's quite a few over there towards the back. And this is because it's actually nesting season now, so we'll go in there in a minute and have a look. There's a few in the water, but 19 penguins altogether here. And well, I'll just show you around here. There's Charlotte and Ashley just going in now. With them there, actually they've got the scales, so we do weigh the penguins. It's one of the big successes in the first lockdown. We were able to train the penguins how to come and stand on the scales when they come to feed. Right, so this bit of interpretation here helps to show you where this bird is found. It is actually a bird that's found in lots of British overseas territories. So yeah, we've got the South Georgia, the Falkland Islands there, dotted all around the Antarctic. So you'll find them in places where there is snow and ice, but also it can be quite rocky as well. So they aren't the ones that do the big marches like you might see on some of the nature programs. Right, so we're just going to pop round. And, this is the rear entrance to what we refer to as the wet side of the penguin exhibit, which is why we're all wearing life jackets, because you don't want to fall in there, and it's quite chilly. Right, so here we are in the wet side. We're going to be coming in and cleaning out this morning, so this is the first thing in the morning for the penguins now. As I mentioned, these are the birds that are now nesting, so if we can get over there just in time and have a look, we can actually see Fry here. This is the one with the orange and white band. Underneath Fry, there's a little egg. In fact, there's 2 eggs, so he's sitting on 2 eggs at the moment. This one here, who's making all the noise just then, is Max. Say a few words. No, he's quite quiet. He's sat on an egg as well. And then we've got Ripley with the green band, and you can see she's got an egg there with her as well. So so we are looking to breed a couple this year, hopefully. It is part of a program, managed program of breeding, and what we do is then, once we breed them, we know which birds chicks belong to which adults, and then we can actually look to transfer them away to other collections. So all these birds were born in captivity, various different places. Some came from aquariums in Australia and New Zealand, and then some from Edinburgh, and then there's a few that have actually been bred here as well. So this is Honey with the yellow band. She had 2 chicks 2 years ago, who probably actually through with Charlotte having their breakfast. Yes, I can't see any of the chicks. So we've got Ramsey here, who's he's starting his nest. You can see there's not many pebbles there, and then these guys are all well on the way. You can see huge amounts of pebbles there. So they're building those. And this is the water pool we've got that the birds like to swim in, and we do feed them in there as well at times. This one is actually Chickpea. So she's a chick from about 3 years ago. So she was the first one born here in London. Right, we're going to go through now to the dry side and have a look. Got Chickpeas following me. Come on. So Ashley and Charlotte are through here. Right. So here we go.
Hello.
Right.
Hello again.
Show me. Extension of microphone.
I'm hoping that you're gonna bring some more penguins through with you, which you have done wonderfully. So some of these guys who are up front, they've actually already had their breakfast. So I'm just waiting for some of the guys, the stragglers at the back, to come through. And front and centre, we've got Loki. So he's one of our male penguins. Come on. Let's see if he's going to get on the scales for us. So every morning we weigh the penguins. This is perfect. So I can see now that Loki is 7.2 kilos, please. And the first fish of the day they get with a vitamin in it. And Loki's just showed me up on camera how rude of him. But we've got a weight for him, so that's good. So we've got another penguin here. This is Clarice. And she is very snatchy and rude. So let's see if she behaves. 5.6 kilos. She's snatched her breakfast, but she's eaten it, and that's the main thing. So this is Juno. So Juno is 6 kilos, and Juno, as you can see, is a lot more polite. Are you ready for breakfast, Juno? Might be surprised at the size of food that they can eat. This is probably about the biggest thing that they would eat in the wild. But they can eat food as small as little tiny shrimp called krill. So very often that's the main thing that they eat in a wild environment, but here we mainly feed them herring. So that was Honey. She's 5.2 kilos and she had 1 herring. Yeah, so we feed the penguins 3 times a day. And that's replicating a feeding habit that they would have in the wild, where they would eat gradually and they would eat as much as they can. So penguins do tend to have a very big appetite. They probably eat the most out of all the animals that we do have in the aquarium. So they certainly run up our food bill, to say the least. Penguins! So as you saw with James earlier, they are very preoccupied with nesting and breeding at the moment. Usually we'd have a whole horde of penguins here at the front, especially for the first feed of the day. But they're feeling rather broody at the moment, so full systems go for breeding season here. Penguins! Come on! So it's really important that we do the target feeds and the weighs, because it allows us to detect any potential health issues before they immediately present. Penguins aren't very good at looking poorly, so it's really important that we keep track of their food intake and their weights. It's a really good indicator for us to be able to pick up on any warning signs before they might occur. Come on, potato. Marmalade again here. Come on. So these guys are actually target trained to come to this black square here. So they know that if they step on the black square, they're going to get some food. Come on, Zig.
Explain about the chicks.
Yeah, so this little girl here, this is Ziggy. So she is a penguin who was actually born here at London Aquarium. She was born 2 years ago, so she is an adult now, but to me she's still a baby. So she was born of 2 penguins that lived here. Her parents are Honey and Fry, who are a male and female pair. However, Honey was a first-time mother. So this was her first fertile eggs, and she had 2 fertile eggs on her nest. So the result of that nest is Ziggy, who you can see there, and Marmalade, who's just here. So the decision was made just before hatch to actually move one of those eggs to a different nest. So we actually have a lesbian pair here. They make a nest every single year, but obviously they never produce fertile eggs. So the decision was made to move one egg to the lesbian pair's nest, and that was to ease the pressure on the original parent pair, because it is a huge sort of strain for parents to raise 2 chicks. It's difficult even just to raise one. So because she was a first-time mother, we made that decision just so each chick got the most attention from each parent pair. And what we've got is 2 very healthy adult penguins now. So Marmalade was raised on the origin nest with Honey and Thrive, and Ziggy was raised perfectly well by Marima and Rocky. So yeah, they don't know it, but they're actually sisters. So one of them is adopted. So yeah. Come on, baby.
I think this is mom coming through. Yeah.
So yeah, we can see Honey here. She's a very small penguin, but this is mum. So this is the genetic mother of both Marmalade and Ziggy. So it's a really important part of what we do here is captive breeding. I mean, first of all, it's a great indicator that they're expressing natural behaviours in a captive environment. She's had a vitamin, has she? Perfect, thank you. It's really great that they're doing it completely on their own and without assistance from keepers. It means they're expressing all their natural behaviours. In terms of breeding penguins in captivity, it means that we can get involved with other collections who are keeping Gen2s, and we can be involved in an international stud book, and within that we will trade animals between collections, and it means that you can keep really excellent genetically varied individuals. It's really important that we make sure that animals aren't suffering from inbreeding in collections like this. So it's really great. So at the moment we're working a lot with Edinburgh Zoo, because they have a really big Gen 2 collection up in Scotland, and they're really fantastic with breeding penguins there.
So a couple of other things here in the exhibit. We've turned it off at the moment, but this sort of object here is an ice machine. So you can see there's a load of ice that's been made overnight. So once the exhibit's been cleaned, then we'll lay this out on the ground for the penguins. They like to sort of almost bathe in it, really. If you just want to show us the chart you've got there. So this is the chart. So as you can see, there's all the names of the penguins there, but also alongside it is the colour which relates to the band that's on their wing. And then the first column there is the weight that we've been getting this morning. And then there's 3 columns you can see, which is for each of the feeds. So so the water here is all filtered downstairs. It's also chilled. It's about 10 degrees, so it's probably colder than if you were to run your cold water tap and then get in the bath. So it's certainly pretty chilly. But these guys jump in. They've got these amazing feathers, and every year they do a big molt, which is quite an interesting. Charlotte's just going to run over now the life cycle of the penguin in a year, if you like.
Yeah, so there's big changes for a penguin throughout the calendar year. It's important to note that with these guys, what we've done is the Gen 2 penguin, as James went through in the beginning of the talk, they're actually from the southern hemisphere, right down in Antarctica, the Antarctic Peninsula, the Falkland Islands, all that part of the world. Obviously up here, they're in the northern hemisphere, and what we've done is we've completely switched their seasonal cycle. In the southern hemisphere, of course, what we would know to be summer, the seasons are very, very short, and in the winter, in December, very, very long. So we've switched it for them here. So I'll speak in terms of the day length. Basically, when the penguins are in their summer, so to speak, the spring-summer period, that's when they're going to start gearing up for the breeding season. So that's what we're in right now. So springtime, they're sort of gearing up they're pairing up with other penguins, very often a penguin that they've paired up with previously in previous years, and they're going to start collecting their nesting pebbles, which again James showed you a little bit earlier on. They're then going to be concentrating on rearing their chicks, nesting their eggs, rearing their chicks, and that could be quite, as I said, quite energy intensive. Sometimes they eat more food during this period because they've got to sustain themselves, and they've also got to sustain their chicks. So again, as you've probably seen with other birds, just like other birds, these guys are going to eat their food and then they're going to regurgitate it into the mouths of their chicks, which is very, very interesting, but also very, very smelly up close, if I'm being completely honest. So yeah, we have to make sure that the parent birds in particular are getting plenty of food. Once the chicks are reared, however, we move into a period of molting. So as James said, this is what we would refer to as a catastrophic molt. So rather than your companion animals like your dogs and cats who will molt periodically throughout the year, like little bits all the time, always growing new fur, the penguins have a catastrophic molt, which means they basically lose all the feathers all at once, all at the same time, and it gets very, very messy in here. So what they do is for a 2-week period, they're going to absolutely gorge themselves. They eat humongous amounts of food, just insane. They can eat upwards of 20% of their body weight a day. They can eat over 1 kilo of food. It's astonishing. It really is. It's very impressive. And what happens then is they gain loads and loads and loads and loads of weight, and then suddenly they just stop eating. And the reason for that is, in the wild, when they start their catastrophic molt, as we've mentioned, those feathers that they have are really excellent for waterproofing and keeping them warm at the same time. So when they go through molt, of course, they're no longer waterproof, and that means that they can't hunt in a wild environment. So what these penguins have adapted is a complete loss of appetite during that molting period, because they wouldn't be able to swim to eat anyway, and that's the purpose for that big gorge beforehand. So they gain all that weight, and then they molt, and they don't eat anything for about 2 weeks. They might have a little snack here and there, but pretty much they don't eat anything. But they have those fat reserves to sustain them throughout that period. So they lose both their underneath and their top level of their feathers, and then they grow a whole new set over the top, and they look absolutely pristine when they come out of molt. They look beautiful, very shiny and new looking. And that molting period probably ends around October time here, but if they're in the southern hemisphere, it's when they're going to start going into that winter period. So it means that they get to gorge in a period where there's lots and lots of food available for them in the summer period. High amounts of prey in the wild, they get to eat loads of food, so they're clean, ready, prepared, new set of feathers for the winter period.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. So, so that's it now from the penguins. But we will be sending you videos from the sea turtles and also the sharks. So hopefully this has worked. Bye.
Right, okay, so that's the first little section over there, all about our Gen 2 penguins. So
they were adorable, weren't they?
They are cute, aren't they?
We had a load of questions coming actually.
Right, okay, let's
some
kick
about
off.
the penguins, some about just general the aquarium. So let's try and get through some of those as well. And what's behind you right now, James?
That was a black chin guitar shark, that.
Looked pinky in colour.
Yeah, it's because they're quite thin, and it's the way the light's shining through as he was against the window, I think.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we have a question from Tispany, one of our homes. One of our residents wanted to know sort of the size comparison. You might not know the answer to this in regards to an aquarium in Dubai. I don't know if you've got any experience with an aquarium in Dubai, but our resident seems to have that.
Okay, yeah, there's a few aquariums out in Dubai. So I in fact used to work for another aquarium here in the UK that used to manage one of those, which is based in the Burj Al Arab. So if ever you see a photo of Dubai, they often show that sail-shaped hotel, and in there are some fairly large aquariums, but they're possibly referring to the Dubai Mall Aquarium, which is probably, I think it's about 5 times the size of our shark tank. So yeah, it's a really big tank. So there's a big window that you can view just from the shopping centre, and then there's a number of exhibits you can pay to go into, visit like a normal aquarium as well.
Brilliant. That answered the question. How does it compare in size to Dubai and Singapore, which answers that one. So a smaller version here. And also, where is the aquarium in London? We got a question around location.
So I'm sat basically underneath the London Eye. We're underground. So our quarantine facility is actually under the road that leads up to the London Eye. So right on the south bank, just across from Big Ben.
Brilliant. Then I had a question. How fast can penguins swim?
That's a good question. They would hope faster than a leopard seal, because otherwise they're going to be dinner. Off the top of my head, I'm not actually sure. I think it might be about 30 miles an hour, or obviously the equivalent underwater.
Okay, brilliant. Dennis at Meadow Park, and this is about seahorses. Do seahorses have a partner for life?
They some do and some don't. There's been some studies in captivity that have shown them not to, but it's not always easy to sort of say that's correct. What tends to happen is a female seahorse will have a sort of a habitat in the wild. She'll have a territory, and that will probably overlap with a number of males. Because the amazing thing with the seahorses is, of course, it's the males that actually are pregnant, and then they carry the eggs. They develop in a pouch, and it's some fish do develop internal offspring, the females, and some males do develop eggs on the outside of their body, but the seahorse actually has it in a pouch, which means it's almost equivalent to, like a mammalian birth. He'll go through contractions and then he'll give birth to them all in one go. And depending on the species, there can be over 1,000 babies.
Wow, we're getting loads of questions in right now. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to answer them. Do you have seahorses there at London Aquarium then?
We do. We've got 3 species here. So we've got a native seahorse. So a lot of people are surprised. There are 2 species of seahorse that live in UK waters. They're both protected because their numbers aren't very high. So we've got that one, which is the short-snouted seahorse. We've then got the big-bellied seahorse from southern Australia. That's the one we're most successful with. We had some babies born this week from those. And then we've got another seahorse, a tropical one, which is the reed-eye seed horse, which actually we've got a mixed group. Some were born in Italy and some were born in Germany.
Oh, wow. And can they all live together in one tank?
That species does. And then what we've actually got, because we want to try and breed them in the future, and we want to make sure we cross the 2 different groups together, all the ones that came from Italy wear little necklaces, so we know who's who.
Okay, cool. You can identify them. Back to penguins. John at Westwood House, how do you tell the difference between male and female penguin?
There's no way of telling apart from taking a blood sample and doing a genetic test. So we're never quite sure what we've got if we have any babies until we get that test, and then we get a little birth certificate that tells us whether it's a boy or a girl.
Wow. Okay, that's so interesting. One of the residents at Laurel Bank would like to know where they sleep.
Say that again, sorry.
Where do they sleep, these penguins?
They sleep. So if they'll still continue through the night. The ones who are on the nests to swap. So they'll sleep on the nest. And then normally we know in the morning where they've been sleeping because there's lots of poo. So they don't go in the water. They get out and they're normally sort of probably nearer the wall because that makes them feel a bit more secure.
That's fair. That's fair. What type of penguins are they?
They're Gen2s. There's Boris the turtle just cruising past.
Boris, we get to see Boris in a second,
yep.
Don't we? Boris is coming through.
Yeah, Gen2 penguins. So they don't tend to do well in the UK if they're outside. So this is a climate controlled exhibit they live in here, and it's one of only 3 in the UK.
Okay. Do penguins mate for life, and can they have more than one chick at a time?
They do sometimes mate for life, but it's not sort of straightforward. We've got one pair, Ratchet and Grub. They came from another aquarium, and they were a pair there, and they've continued to remain a pair here. But the chicks you saw just then from 2 years ago, their parents, Honey and Fry, Honey's actually been ousted, and Fry has paired up with Potato this year. So that was a bit of a surprise because Potato's a bit of a pain. So
that's Honey and Potato instead of Honey and Fry.
So yeah. So if we get a chick from Fry and Potato, if we get a chick from Fry and Potato, we might call it Chips.
I love these names. Yeah, great.
They normally the Gen2s have 2 eggs normally. So there's a bit of an insurance policy in the wild that at least they try and get 1 chick through.
Do the penguins like interacting with keepers? Do they like cuddles?
You can sort of habituate them if you work with them long enough to get them to sort of be a bit more forthcoming with contact. But you might have noticed in the video there was one penguin towards the end stepped off the scales and she was a bit closer. Another one, there was a little bit of a squabble.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was actually the 2 sisters, Marmalade and Ziggy. We tend to find if you try and stroke them, they tell you they don't like to be stroked.
I don't like it. They're not doing it.
No. They will come out and they like chasing sort of keys and we do put objects in as well for enrichment, and then we put food into the water and things like that as well. But they're still essentially wild animals.
Sure, makes perfect sense. We've got David at Ford Mill. How many penguins or chicks can they have?
So yeah, two would be the maximum per season. If they lost an egg early on in the nesting season, they may lay another egg. So they could, but they wouldn't be looking to actually be sitting on any more than 2 eggs, because physically, if you think about it in the wild, they've got to keep those eggs warm, and they haven't got room to hold any more than 2 eggs.
Okay, brilliant. I've got a couple of questions coming in around some tech I'll help with for a second. If you're only seeing a poster of the Sea Life, which is the video, then just have a look in your settings for view at the moment. Try speaker view. Any activity coordinators or staff that are watching on Zoom, just try and mix around the view that you're seeing so you can see James and I speaking. But we will carry on with the penguin questions for now. We've got a resident in Crandon Springs who would like to know how long the penguins live for.
It's interesting because now in captivity we're learning so much more about their welfare, so they're living a lot longer. In the wild, they obviously have to deal with a lot more stress than they do in captivity, so this sadly can mean their lifespans are a lot shorter. But some of our penguins are in their 20s, and there was a penguin, I think it was somewhere in Europe, celebrated a 39th birthday last week. But I'm pretty sure I saw another story about the oldest penguin in captivity, which was actually in its 50s, and it certainly looked it. So
Fair enough. Wow. Okay, I think we've got all of our questions. We've got a couple of people saying that they can only see the Sea Life. That's to do with your settings, what you're watching on. So play around with your settings, guys. And see how that works. If you've got tech issues, just have to play around. I think that's it for my. Oh, I had a question around the bands, but you kind of explained that in the. That's to help you identify the penguins when you check on them and do their weight and things.
Yeah, that's it. So a different colour, so we know them individually, and then the male penguins have it on their right, and then the females on their left. And then it means when we're doing that feed, we can tick off to make sure everyone, because the first fish of the day, we put vitamins and minerals in there for them. So we need to make sure they're getting those. And also we actually record every single fish they eat. And then we plot weight charts for them as well. So, there's quite a lot of sort of stats that goes into it as well.
Okay, brilliant. And I'm intrigued, who gets to name these penguins? Kato, Fry, Ziggy?
Yeah, sometimes it's the staff. Sometimes there's, we do like public engagement competitions. So Ziggy was a public engagement one last year because Ziggy was the one raised by the same-sex couple. Marmalade was because it was honey, marmalade, jam, it was a breakfast condiment. Potato, I think, was an ex-member of staff who now works at London Zoo, just plucked it off the top of her head because she liked the word. So it does vary. Some of them came with their names from other collections already. Loki, I think, was already named when he arrived. So there's no definitive theme, shall we say.
Just depends on the flow and people's ideas and inspiration. Okay, brilliant. I think that means we can move on. I think, where are we going next, James?
So we're going to go to, first of all, we'll be in the public area a little bit to begin with, and then we'll go into the top of the shark tank. Now, in there's a lot of life support equipment, so it is a little bit noisier, the background, but we'll only be in there for a few minutes before we come back and go downstairs where it's a lot more quieter and you'll be able to hear what I say a lot easier. So yeah, the shark tank now, okay?
So just be wary of sound here, guys, when we go into different areas within the aquarium. Right.
We're on to the next section now, so we're actually quite near the start of the aquarium. We're going to go and see the sharks. So this is the way, we're going the opposite way actually to what the public would first come in. So they would come over the shark walk. Oh, there we go, there's one of the sand tigers. And there's the other sand tiger actually. So 2 boys there, Zippy and Bungle. One of our nurse sharks, Caribbean nurse shark, swimming by there as well. So this gives people a bit of a sneaky glimpse at the start to view the shark tank, and then they come back to it later again. There's our grey reef shark. She's probably my favourite actually, very beautiful shark. Right, so like I say, yeah, the public would be coming in here normally, and they'd walk straight past this door, which they probably wouldn't notice, and in here is the top of the shark tank. So today we've got Leah, we've got Ashley, and we've got Hayley, who are all going to be feeding the sharks. So this is the food we've got ready. So some mackerel there. This is some tuna and some whiting. And then we've got trevally, chopped sprat, squid, saury, and also is the food there for the turtles. Right, girl, so I'll let you carry on and get everything ready. So you can see, so there's about 1 million litres of water in this tank. So it's the biggest tank here at Sea Life London Aquarium. And we have to be very careful with how we feed all the sharks, because if we just threw the food in, obviously the most aggressive would get all the food, and then some of the smaller ones wouldn't get much to eat. So what we do, you can see the girls here are getting one of the targets ready. So this is a sign that goes into the tank, so the sharks then know that that's their target to come to. So that particular one there is for the nurse sharks. A little bit of scatter food going in for some of the fish. It just helps get them interested. It's also a little bit of way of indicating that the feed is going to begin. So that's the golden trevally fish there, and then there's a batfish as well. And I think Leah nearly hit me with it then. So she's just getting that going. And the far corner where Leah is, she'll feed the blacktip reef sharks. And then we've got Hayley down there who's going to feed the sand tigers. So we'll just have a quick look over here. It's quite noisy, so I hope you can hear me okay. So yeah, this is where we'll feed the sand tigers from. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go downstairs, so you'll be able to see that a little bit better from there. Right, so here we are. We're now down viewing the shark tank at the level the public would see it when they come in to visit. We can see the two sand tiger sharks, Zippy and Bungle, here. They're both circling just here because they know that's where the food's going to come in from. So Hayley has just popped some food in just here. So that's a trevally, quite a favourite feed of the sand tigers. You can see it up. He was having a look, but he didn't quite turn in time to get that one. Let's just see if he comes back round. So this one is Zippy. So he's lived here as long as the aquarium has been here. So he's at least 20 years old, probably actually more mid to late 20s now. You can see they're burping some air out now. It's quite interesting with this species of shark. They actually hold air in their stomach to help with their buoyancy. Makes them really efficient. Right, here he comes again. No, he's not quite there. I think because he's just swallowed some air, he's actually still sorting his buoyancy out. And it's kind of leaving him a little bit unbalanced at the moment. So the smaller sharks, you can see there's one, I know he's gone down below. The smaller sharks zipping around are the blacktip reef sharks. And then let's just see, there's nobody else coming in at the moment. So yeah, you can see the blacktips, they can smell the food in the water now. So some of them have dropped low in case any's got dropped. Here we go. This is Bungle now. He's not ready yet. Yeah, sometimes sharks, I mean, a lot of people think sharks are quite voracious, just eating machines, but they aren't at all. Their evolution has meant they're really efficient with their energy they take in, and they're cold-blooded. So unlike us, where we're warm-blooded, about 40% of the food we take in goes to just keeping our body temperature warm. With a shark, it's not necessary for that, because obviously the water in which it lives gives it its body temperature. Right, so yeah, it seems at the moment the sand tigers are not that interested. They are definitely circling, and they are not swimming their normal sort of lazy patterns deeper in the water, so it may just take them a little bit of time to settle before they come to feed. Right, here comes Zippy, I think, from this side. He's gone quite deep though now. Bungle's having luck. He's missed as well. black tips. Here's Carol, the tawny nurse shark. She's one of the favourite with the staff. She often comes over for a little tickle and a scratch when you're diving in there. So we do dive in this tank. We have to go in to clean the windows. You can see there's more windows down there. So from time to time we do dive and go in and siphon the gravel and turn the bottom over to make sure it's all getting filtered. So as the sharks weren't that hungry today on that feed, a little video here of one feeding that we got the other week, just so you can see the action. Hi, so okay.
Right, so that was the sharks there, who didn't live up to their name of being ravenous eating machines.
The food, did they? They weren't,
No.
they weren't having it. We haven't got any, guys. Remember to ask questions. If you've got any around the sharks, just keep throwing them into the chat there. I've written a couple down though. I was interested in the fact that you've got. Well, actually, let's start with how many shark types do you have in that tank?
So in that tank, there's 5 altogether. So we've got the sand tiger sharks we were looking at mostly there, or depending on where you are in the world, if you're in South Africa, they get called ragged tooth sharks, or if you're in Australia, they get called grey nurse sharks. So that's the big guys. Then we've got a grey reef shark. There's one female of those. She's the sort of next largest normal looking shark, if you like. With the nurse sharks, we've got 2 kinds. So we've got the Caribbean nurse shark and then the tawny nurse shark. And it was the tawny one who popped up to say hello, because she's kind of quite a friendly little, or quite big animal. And then it's the grey reef sharks, which were the smaller ones flitting around. And then there's one rather unusual looking one, which was the bowmouth guitarfish, Betty. So they sometimes get called shark rays because they're kind of a cross between the two of them, if you like, but she's probably the boss of the tank, and if you're not careful, she bites your feet when you go in, so you've got to keep an eye on her.
Oh, I noticed you have like loads of little fish in there as well, like swimming around doing their thing. You've got no worry of the sharks eating them. That's just not going to happen. Or
no, I mean it's one of those things where we often get asked that question by the children. So normally the best answer I've got for the kids is like, you get home and your mum or your dad's got your dinner ready. And then you ask what it is, and she said, well, you can either have, the chicken breast that's there on the table, or you can go out in the garden and catch yourself a live chicken. It's going to be a lot easier to go with what you've been offered. So it's a case of balancing. Obviously, if we didn't feed the sharks, then yes, they would eventually, take all the fish. But by balancing the diets and also using those training devices to feed the sharks at certain points, it means, because sharks aren't continually trying to feed, they switch on into a mode where they want to feed, and that's when they obviously go hunting. So it's knowing about that.
Interesting. We had a question from Charlotte at Wadhurst Manor. How many times a day do the sharks get fed?
So we only feed the sharks 3 times a week, so they don't need a lot of food at all. They are amazingly efficient in how they use their the energy they take in. If we eat too much, we get a bit fat. If sharks they can't eat too much really. But what they actually do, any excess fat is stored as lipid in their liver, and it makes them more buoyant, which makes them more efficient at swimming. So it means they have to eat less and less food. So they are so well evolved to do what they do.
Yeah, made to survive really, really well, I guess, out in the oceans there.
Yeah.
How often have any of your team been bitten by one?
No.
No, because they are fed and they are happy.
That's it. Yeah.
How long do sharks live?
Again, it varies. It depends on the kind of shark. So here we've got, those are all tropical sharks we just saw. So they're living in water of around 25 degrees. If you go colder, things tend to grow much more slowly, but also much larger and live for a lot longer. And there's a Greenland shark that was actually recorded as being over 700 years old. So it's absolutely phenomenal. The ones we've got here, the sand tigers, I think some of the longest records in captivity is about 50 years again, like the penguin was. But in the wild, they would probably live maybe 20, 30 years. The life of a shark is quite intense. Mating in sharks is very aggressive. You can't really hold on to somebody else if you've got no arms. So they hold each other with their teeth. So yeah, it's quite full on.
Wow. Yeah, that's. Are they man eaters?
No, none of these are. I mean, all sharks obviously have the potential to bite, but all these species of sharks, the sand tigers have very gruesome looking, thin, long, pointed teeth, but that's to help them catch slippery fish. The nurse sharks tend to rely on sort of digging around in the sand looking for bivalves and clams and crabs, and then they've got bony plates that they crush that food up with. And the same with Betty the bowmouth. So they wouldn't eat people or mammals.
Okay, brilliant. We've got a question from Tiffany. Here we go. How do you deal with disease?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. So the first step really is to stop it getting in. So in a way, a little bit like what we've all been getting used to with lockdowns and quarantine, that's exactly what we have here. We have a special quarantine room. So in there, we have loads of tanks and vats where any new animals will arrive. A month ago, we had some new eagle rays arrive, and so they're currently in quarantine. And what we'll do is we'll make sure we give them some treatments to get rid of any regular normal parasites that might occur. We'll also make sure they're feeding well, and then we'll give them some last treatments before they move up to our exhibits. So it's all about controlling those. Other than that, we maintain the water quality really well, be giving the livestock the correct nutrition as well. This really helps. A lot of the diseases and parasites that might be present, their own immune systems will get rid of if the animals aren't stressed. So it's a case of doing all the little things every day to make the big things work.
And how long is quarantine usually?
Usually 4 weeks at least. We use there's one sort of treatment we put into the water that we have to keep at a certain level for about 28 days. So it's usually that is the sort of main one. Some animals will take longer. They'll be more sensitive. We need to train them how to feed in a mixed exhibit like this one behind us, which is what we're doing with those eagle rays at the moment. If we put them in there and we put food in, they'll smell the food, but they'll go and look for it on the bottom. So we've got to train them to come to a platform at the surface.
Oh, okay. So there's a bit of training to get them to eat the way that you want them to.
Yeah.
Can you? Oh, here we go. Good questions. Do you breed them?
Some of them we do. Some is very difficult. The sand tigers they are unique. The way they breed, no other shark in the world breeds the same way. It's quite gruesome. So the female sand tiger will actually have 2 uterus, and that's because when she's pregnant, the largest individual, the largest pup, will eat all the smaller pups that are in the uterus. The mother, the shark, will then continue to produce eggs for this juvenile to feed on. And then when she gives birth to it, what it actually means is the baby shark will look like a perfect miniature of the adults. It'll be about 1.1 meter long, and it's basically ready to go from day one. There's no development needed. It just needs to grow. So it's given birth to, she swims off, it leaves it, it swims off and starts hunting fish. So it's absolutely amazing. And so because they can only have one, that's why they have 2 uterus. So it means that two can develop at the same time. The blacktip reef sharks, they give birth to live pups, and they can have up to sort of 10 or 15, but they're much smaller. They'll only be about 30 centimeters long when they're born. So they breed in very different ways. So our blacktips here, because they're part of a breeding program, we actually have a bachelor group. So if other sites breed them, and because when you have a group of sharks together, you want more females than males if you're going to try and breed them, because of how aggressive it can be. So our sister site down at Brighton actually had some baby blacktips last year, and I think there was one more, Hunstanton as well. They also had a baby blacktip. So yeah, there is a bit of breeding that goes on.
And how can you tell which one is female and male or male?
So the males have a little special appendage, shall we say, or in fact in sharks they have 2, and they're called claspers. So one's on they are sort of joined together at the base, but one goes right and one goes left. So you get right-handed and left-handed male sharks.
Interesting. So two for the male and 2 uteruses for the females then?
The only with the sand tigers is 2 uterus. Yeah, 1 uterus for all other sharks.
Wow, this is fascinating stuff. I don't know about you guys, but I'm enthralled. do you have any hammerhead sharks, and what kind of fish do they eat? It looked like tuna.
No, we don't have hammerheads here. Our tanks aren't big enough. There's a few aquariums in the world are trying to keep the scalloped hammerhead, but it's a very sensitive species. It's very difficult. Some aquariums do keep a smaller relative called the bonnet head, and these ones only tend to probably get about the size of the black tips. But they're again quite a sensitive species. You need a dedicated display for those. The larger hammerhead sharks are pretty voracious. They can take on, they like to eat stingrays, one going behind me there, and they use that hammer to pin them down when they bite them. But the smaller hammerheads can actually take fish. They can even find fish that are buried in the sand, because the sharks and rays have this very special device, which is called the ampoule of Lorenzini, and they can detect electrical impulses. So if you're swimming next to a shark, it can see you. It can feel the vibrations that come off your body as you swim, but it can also sense the electrical contraction of your muscles as well.
Wow, fascinating species. What about the food? She said, what fish do they eat? It looked like tuna.
Yeah, it depends. The bigger sharks like the trevally, which is a very similar species to the tuna. We do sometimes feed a small kind of tuna as well, but things like whiting and mackerel. They also get squid. The mantle of the squid actually gives us a very convenient little pocket to put vitamins and minerals in as well. So it's quite a mix really, but mostly fish.
I think you said you give the vitamins in the morning. What was that thing? No.
Yeah, normally the same. The first piece of food we offer to the sharks, we'll put the vitamins in to try and make sure they get it first.
Yeah, perfect. Emily, final question, and then we'll move on to our turtles. How do they digest their food, and do they have one stomach or several?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So they have a stomach like we do, but what they have, so if people have seen images of the human intestine and it's all sort of wriggly and it's a real old mess, the sharks and the rays don't. They have what's called a spiral colon. And so sadly, sometimes we do lose the animals. And if we do lose one, we'll do a post-mortem. And when you open up a shark, it's very neat and tidy. Their intestine is in a perfect spiral, and it's all wrapped up in this little bag. It's called the spiral valve or the spiral intestine, and it means it's really, really efficient as to how they digest their food. So yeah, it's quite amazing, to be honest.
Do they have a stomach at all, or is it?
Yeah, they do have a stomach before that, so they will feed. They'll fill their stomach, and then obviously it'll start to break down in there. And then once it's in the liquid form, it'll go into the spiral valve, and that's where the nutrient extraction occurs.
Wow, fascinating stuff. All right, guys, thank you so much for your questions. I hope we've got through them all. And let's move on to our introduce where we're going to next. Okay.
Yep. So we start in the same place as we did for the sharks, but this time we're going to go to the top of the other big tank that's next door to it. That's the ocean tank. And in there, we're going to have a look, first of all, at the green sea turtle, Boris, who has sort of made a few appearances behind me. But we're also going to look at cow-nosed rays as well.
Okay, here we are now. We're going to go and meet our one of our green turtles, who's in a different tank to the one you've seen with the sharks in. It's just a bit interesting, the location to get to for this. So that's the way the public normally come in, through the lifts there going down to the start of the attraction. But if we pop through this door here, not only is the aquarium here at South Bank, there's also Shrek's Adventure. So quite randomly, you walk through here and you get to see Shrek's Adventure, and this is their gift shop as people are leaving. And then this next door unveils our dive store area. Bits we have to go in to maintain them, clean the windows, do a little bit of feeding sometimes as well, and also just say hello to the public. They like to see divers. So we've got the regulators there, and then the BCDs, and then all the wetsuits. We have different size wetsuits, thicknesses, long and short ones, depending on what exhibit we might be diving in. And then through this curtain here, we then come to the top of our next biggest tank, which is the ocean tank. Then we've got Emily, who's one of our senior aquarists. She's here and she's about to start a feed. But one of our favourite residents, this is Boris, the green sea turtle. And he's just chomping down there on some broccoli. He's a vegetarian, although he does also like a little meaty treat now and again, so that's a squid. And what we actually do with the squid, I don't know if you can see, but just inside it there we can actually stuff vitamins and minerals that he'll need to help his shell stay nice and healthy. It also means if we had a health problem, we could put treatments in there as well. So there he goes, coming up to take that. So yeah, he's a green sea turtle. So these are found in tropical waters all around the world. Sadly, all the sea turtles are quite endangered for a number of different reasons. Habitat loss from where they nest. They live continually in the water. The only time they will come out of the water is the female turtles will come ashore to nest, and those beaches have had developments take place on them, which has caused a bit of disturbance, and so nesting can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. But the male turtles, like Boris here, once they hatch and they leave the beach where they hatch, they never come ashore again. They live out in the open ocean all the time, wandering. This species of turtle gets its name green turtle. Well, the light's a bit funny here actually, but you'll be able to see there's no green on him, and it's actually, there's a green tinge to the flesh of the turtle. Sadly, one of the challenges the species faces is human consumption. Some of the Caribbean islands many years ago would eat them in quite large numbers. So, and the flesh of the green turtle is actually slightly green, so that's where its name comes from. So Boris is about 120 kilos in weight, and we know that because we do take him out sort of every 6 months, and we weigh him, make sure his growth is okay, and also at that time we'll take a blood sample just to check that the levels in there, which might give us any indication if there are any other problems. But generally he's fine, and yeah, like I say, he's a big old unit at 120 kilos, and that's because a lot of his body is that shell. So so the shell's made out of the same sort of material as our fingernails, so it has got nerve endings in it. He can feel, and one of the favourite things he likes is a good shell scrub. So it's part of the enrichment. Every so often we'll come up and give him a good shell scratch, and he really enjoys that. We have a second turtle here, Gonzales. He's downstairs at the moment in a different system. He really likes the shell scratch. He's like a little puppy, to be honest. So yeah, he really does enjoy that attention. So Boris is in the ocean tank here. This is the top of the exhibit where people don't normally get to come, apart from the aquarists. You can't see all of the tank actually from here because of the Shrek gift shop that we walked through there. That's that sort of corridor you can see. But if I just step down on one of the other platforms, you'll then get a bit of a better view across there. So on that side over there we've got another platform that we get in from to do dives in this tank, and then we've got another platform that we can lower just there, and that's where we feed our cow nose rays off, and that's these guys who are whizzing around below me. There's another one going past now. So what we do is we feed them at a different time. If we had them coming up where Boris is being fed, there's a chance he may mistake them for a bit of his food, and then they could receive a bite. And you don't want to be bitten by a turtle. The power of their bite, it's a beak, it's not a mouth, it's a beak, it's a very hard structure, so they can inflict quite a lot of damage. So these are the cow nose rays there, whizzing around. So yeah, so about 800,000 litres in this tank, and the water's continually filtered. It's seawater, obviously based here in London on the banks of the Thames. We haven't got seawater available, so we mix all our own salt water. We purify the tap water, and then we add a synthetic blend of minerals to it in order to create that. It's not just straightforward salt like you'd have on the dinner table. We need to add all kinds of different minerals to make the right balance for the fish, the corals and the jellyfish that live in the waters here. And then once it's in the exhibits, we then have big life support systems downstairs that are turning the water over continually, and they're removing all the fish's wastes, and then periodically we actually refresh it with some new clean water. So it's quite a big operation, a big undertaking here. Okay, so just a little quick view from below. So here's Boris. You can actually see him a bit closer now, rather than through the surface of the water. This is just below where the tray's gone in actually for the cow-nose rays to feed. So these were the ones we were just seeing whiz around from above, and you can see how they know that tray means food, so they're all clamouring around it. Boris has come in to have a look as well, maybe trying to see if he can steal the odd little snack. Yeah, he's probably had his fill now, but yeah, you can already see the cow-nose understand that means it's feeding time, and it's their location. So they've really come accustomed to the tray very well. So that's what those guys look like. So then this is the rest of the ocean tank. We've got some stingrays down there, right on the bottom. One cruising by. Beautiful animals, really. And then there's various other fish, triggerfish there, and unicorn fish, these darker ones that are up just in front of the camera. So yeah, that's the ocean tank here at Sea Life London Aquarium.
Right, so that's all the sort of talks I've got for you there, and then this is just a little bit of footage of our jellyfish area.
Oh, well, let's talk over the jellyfish area if that's okay. We've had some questions come in. I wanted to quickly ask you, why is Boris your favourite?
I don't know, did I say that? I don't think that. Yeah, he's quite a character. He's quite, he's quite a big unit. The green turtles are. I've worked with a few different species of turtles, and the green turtles are probably the friendliest, to be honest. I've worked with loggerheads that they'll bite you as soon as you look at you. So yeah, green turtles are much nicer to work with.
Have you ever been bitten? You mentioned on that recording.
I haven't. I've been pretty lucky. I've managed to avoid it, and I've worked in aquariums a few years. But yeah, I do know some people who've not been so lucky, and they are very powerful.
But yeah, I can really, yeah, beaks you mentioned, I think you said. So what are the tanks made of?
So the window behind me is actually plastic. It's acrylic. So and then the way they're made is it's a concrete tank, and then normally that is all fiberglass, and then the window is set into the recess. So yeah, it's not like an all glass aquarium like you would have at home.
Yeah. I love the picture of the jellyfish that you've got going on here. Are you doing that light effect? Is that in the room or is it part of this tank that you're doing with the different colours, basically? Yeah,
that's like a light that projects into the actual tank, and then it's an LED on a colour change program.
Like a therapeutic. It's nice to watch, basically. How many baby turtles do they have?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, they'll nest usually in tropical beaches, and there'll be hundreds, depending on the species, up to thousands of eggs laid. Not always will they hatch and survive. Previously, I was lucky enough to work on a conservation project for turtles in the Mediterranean, in Kefalonia actually, and there we'd marked out all the nests, so we knew when they would hatch, and we were able to almost to the day predict. So we could go and listen to the nests, and you could hear them starting to dig their way out, and then you would see them all emerge, and hundreds of little turtles would run off towards the sea and disappear for years and years. No one really knows in those early years how they survive when they're so small, but they do. But very few of them actually make it back. It's quite a tough life being a turtle.
Yeah. No. Moving on to the rays. Is it true? This is Kirsty. Is it true that if you stroke a ray that you can burn them, as our body temperature is a lot hotter than theirs?
I wouldn't say you would burn them, but what you have to be aware of is something called pH. The pH of our skin can be very different to the animal's skin. The protective oils and mucus that can be on fish, if we don't handle them correctly, we can actually end up removing, and that is their sort of first defense against disease. So we do have to be very careful. So when we move any of the fish, we tend to use rubberized nets. If we move jellyfish, we always do it in bags or jugs. We never take them out of the water. Also with the stingrays, for our own protection, we actually have special Kevlar gloves, because they are stingrays, they could sting you. And we also have an adapted we have an adapted tray that we lift them in, to make sure we can move them both safely for the ray or the shark and the members of staff as well.
Good answer for that one. Are turtles endangered in the wild?
Yeah, so all the species of turtles are endangered. It's the human interaction is one of those reasons. One of the other problems is the temperature at which the eggs are incubated dictates the sex of the turtle. So higher or lower will give you more males or more females. So as the temperatures of the planet undulate naturally at a relatively slow speed, we'll see more females or more males. But as climate change happens faster, the species will start to skew towards having more of one sex. And eventually, you could see turtles die out because the males can't find enough females because there's just so many males.
Oh, because it's hotter temperatures.
Yeah.
Just a quick message from Kelly. James, you have an amazing job. Thank you from Lyndon House. Ivy has loved it. And thank you from Melbourne Springs as well. Do all jellyfish sting? Great question.
They all sting of an amount. So the ones we're seeing here on the screen now are moon jellyfish. You'll see these in UK waters quite commonly. Their sting is very, very light. You can, a little bit like bees, obviously some people can react much more than others. This one now, the marble jellyfish, their sting is really difficult for us to feel. So the species we keep here don't tend to cause much problem, but there are obviously some jellyfish species that are really bad.
But not here, and not at Sea Life.
Not the ones we have. No, I have worked with some before in the past. We displayed more because it was more for informing the public. They were starting to wash up on the beaches at a certain time of year in the southwest. Oops, that's stopped. I'll see if I can.
Hi, welcome to
Sea Life Jellyfish again.
Yeah, I just
have a nice image to the back of our chat here. Just to let you know, James, as you're working through that, loads of people are saying thank you. James, thank you for an amazing insight to life at the Sea Life Centre from all at Seapen Lodge. Got some actual questions to ask you as well. Thank you so much for the residents at Southgate Beaumont. Hollyfield say thank you for a great presentation and tour. They've had a lovely time at Hollyfields. Karen, Lawton Rise. We'll give you this feedback at the end when we've got it in the chat. But before we go into the thank yous, what is the turtle's main predators as adults and babies? That's Charlotte at Wadhurst.
Right. Well, as adults, they have very few because of that shell. They're really quite powerful. And it's quite surprising I don't know if he makes an appearance behind me, hopefully he's listening. They look quite sort of lethargic and slow swimming, but it's quite amazing. If you see a turtle that feels threatened by something, they can really shift. And they're also really quite clever. The width of their shell is so wide, there are no predators that they have could get their mouth around it. So if a predator is near, what they will do is they will turn their body to swim past the predator, showing them the shell, and they couldn't get bitten. And I worked with a turtle in the past. He'd been in aquariums for a long time, but he'd outgrown his tank. He moved to our aquarium. He'd never been in with divers before. So when we went in to clean the tank, he didn't know what we were, and he was doing his threat posture. So he would come, it was a very big tank, he would disappear away, watch us from a distance, and then he would cruise back up with his broad side of his shell to sort of have a look at us, and then he'd clear off again. And eventually he settled down. So if he's surprised, then turtles can be grabbed probably by tiger sharks. Tiger sharks got very well adapted teeth for sort of dealing with turtle shell. As juveniles, this is where turtles are really sort of vulnerable, and they'll be taken by all kinds of animals. There'll be big fish that'll eat them, birds will eat them. In Greece, where I was actually, there was a species called a beach martin, a little bit like the pine martin that we get in Scotland, and they're almost like a ferret, a member of the weasel family, and they would take them off the beach as well. So if you're a baby turtle, you're in a war zone as soon as you're born.
Oh. Kirsty and the Warren, are your turtles both being born in captivity? Are they born in captivity, or were they once in the ocean?
So these ones were born in captivity. These were born at a place over in the Cayman Islands. So there is a sort of an internal beach, if you like, where there's a load of turtles that lay on that, and then what happens is the eggs are collected, and then they're grown on. Now, a number of those are sort of, they go through a process that's called head starting. So as I've mentioned, it's so difficult when you're a juvenile turtle, you've got lots of threats. So what they do is they grow them to about 1.5 years old, and then they release them. So it gives them a better chance of survival. Sadly, some of them are not so lucky. Some of them actually, it is a farm, some of them do go for meat. Here's Boris now, actually, just making a little bit of an appearance. So they are also helping, trying to reduce and re-educate about eating wild turtles in some of those Caribbean islands.
Wow. Okay. I did joke about Boris being your favourite animal. Is he, or do you actually have, or is there another species that you?
Trying to think. There are some it's not quite as exciting as a turtle, but one of my favorite animals is the leaf cutter ants. So we have a colony of leaf cutter ants, so they're quite really interesting to watch. So a little bit like bees, there's a queen ant in there, and then she's running the colony. And these ants, they come out, and you might have seen them on the nature programs. They cut little pieces of leaf off, they take them back to the nest, but they aren't actually eating the leaf. What they're doing is they grow a fungus in their nest that they put the leaves into. The leaves ferment, feed the fungus grows, and then the ants eat the fungus. So it's quite an amazing sort of evolutionary path that they've gone on. So yeah, they're one of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, so the leaf is like a plate, and the cut
Yeah,
not the mold. Did you say that grows?
the mold, yeah, the fungus, yeah.
Are terrapins a type of turtle? That's from Emily.
Yeah, terrapins. It's usually like I think more of an English word that's used to describe a freshwater turtle. So yeah, terrapins. You can't actually buy terrapins in the UK now, the traditional red-eared terrapin, because sadly, again, because of climate change, people don't realise that if you buy a 50p piece size terrapin and you're good at looking after it, it's going to live for 15-20 years, and it's going to be the size of a dinner plate in a couple of years. So we do have some terrapins here, and they are sadly all sort of abandoned pets. We have a snapping turtle who is a North American. He's like a terrapin on steroids. He's even bigger, and he was found wandering around in Richmond Park. So yeah, not the best place for him, but probably a pet that somebody discarded. So he's quite happy in the rainforest here.
Oh, you saved him from the park to Sea Life London Aquarium. Emily says one of our residents said she remembers being on holiday in Tenerife and turtles came out of the black sand. It was amazing.
Right.
Bit of feedback there. No, I imagine it would be. Guys, if any of you watching, any of our homes are watching on YouTube, just pop in the live chat if you're watching, so I can collect your home name and know that you've attended over on YouTube. That'd be great help. I think we're at the end now. Lots of thank yous from everybody. So I will send these on to James, everyone. And if you've got any more questions, get them in the chat as well, and we'll send them over and we'll get you some answers in the Life Enrichment newsletter once we get there at the weekend. So I think that is everything for today. James, thank you ever so much.
No problem.
All of us at Barchester for providing not only the videos but the fascinating information that you've given on the side and the questions and things like that. I mean, I purposely didn't look at the content, and I just think it's fantastic, and I've watched it firsthand today and gone, oh, there's so many amazing things that I don't know about the world, basically, is what you've told me. And do you have any comments yourself? Have you how's it been for you today, and also are you looking forward to opening and getting back into the run of things?
Yeah, we've got a few more weeks left, so it's sort of getting back into the swing of knowing this area is going to be full of public, and really sort of focusing on that for the team, whilst also trying to remain safe, with the current situation, because we've got to remember we're not out of it yet. But yeah, it's certainly, it's looking positive. We were able to bring our teams back together last week, so that's really helped. It's boosted morale a bit, and helping get us all going. So it will be great to get open. A little bit, yeah, but there's quite a bit to do, but we will be okay. We'll get there for the 17th.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I hope the opening goes well and everything runs as smoothly as it can to get you all back in the swing of things now we can do these things again. But on behalf of all of us at Barchester, all our residents, all our staff, thank you so much for being here with us today. I think we've got loads of lovely comments that I will share with you. And yeah, I'll call it a day there. So